Hi, and welcome to Speak on Stage. My name is Dave Crane, and in this show, we talk about great speakers, we share lots of amazing tips, and talk to some incredible people. Our next guest is a dear friend of mine who I've worked with for a couple of years. I've known him for a long time, and this guy is incredible. He's more than just a life coach, because when you get to know him, you realize that his family business is the diamond business. So he knows everything about business, about the ability to get the very best out of people, but more than anything, he specializes in being an explorer, mountaineer, and also decluttering the lives of successful people who find themselves caught in a real challenge of work life balance, how to see more of your family, how to do less work but still get the same results. It's my great pleasure now to introduce you to Saahil Mehta. Sahil, how are you, sir?
Dave, what a pleasure to be here. Lovely to connect with you.
Always a pleasure, and it's great to see you too. Now, the thing is, we go way back. We've known each other for quite some time, and before lockdown, it was all about the speaking gigs. It's all about getting connected. It was conferences and the opportunities to go to meetup events and meet new people. The last year has been a really strange experience for everyone concerned. How was it for you?
It was very challenging at first, but then I said, what can I do to make this a better situation? And I chose acceptance. I accepted what's going on in the world around me. And I said, right, now that I've accepted, how do I maximize my time and make this as productive as possible for myself and my growth, which I can then, share with the world out there. And so I decided to finish the book that I'd started pre-lockdown. Before that, I was always an excuse, not to finish that chapter. But during lockdown, I was just pounding away, and thankfully, January of this year, book.
Hooray! Break free. And actually, while we're on the subject, we might as well give a proper plug for it on Amazon before we get into why people should be buying it. Let's show them where they can get it. If you go to Amazon, you can see it there, break free. And also, it's available for how much is it in dollars? What does it say? It
20
just says in dirhams there. That's
$20.
about $20, is it?
Correct.
About $20, which is a fantastic book. I've got my signed copy, which makes me incredibly happy. And also, one of the things about working with Sahil is you realize how much of an expert he is on what the main problems that are facing business people. Now, that's the thing about it, Sahil. You declutter. When we first started talking about it, I thought, oh, great. What you do is you go around people's cupboards and you say, right, that's got to go. That's got to go. There's no way you're ever going to fit in that again. And what were you thinking about buying that? But there's more to it about decluttering. Could you explain?
Absolutely. I still remember the phone call that I once received asking me to come and rearrange the closet. And I'm like, I don't do that, but I can certainly recommend someone who does. So no, it's about decluttering the space between our ears, right? It's really focusing on the mind. I mean, everything is linked to our thoughts. We have, I think it's 10,000 to 60,000 thoughts a day, right? And unfortunately, about 80% of them are negative. Now, you know, imagine yourself, you have this ball and chain that's wrapped around your leg, and you're dragging it around everywhere you go. And as a mountaineer, I can tell you, if I had lots of balls and chains wrapped around my leg, it's going to take me longer, it's going to require more energy, and the chance of me making it to the summit are significantly less. So essentially, clutter, I define it as nothing more than shunned confrontations, confrontations with self, with people, with health, with the world around us. But ultimately, what that means is I've got all these balls and chains wrapped around my leg. I'm just dragging it everywhere I go. And Dave, here's the funny part. People say, I want to improve, I want to soar to new heights. Imagine how much harder that is when you've got all that excess weight that you just don't need. It's time to break free from it.
Now, one of the things you mentioned there is about all the negative things that people have in their clutter. So you have that many thoughts per day. What was it, about 40, 80,000 you mentioned? Something like that. I've never counted mine. I probably got a lot less than most people. But you said most of them are negative. Now, most of them aren't really negative. They're protective. And the protection is naturally to don't do anything to stay safer. So when you clarify in that kind of direction, do you think that we don't find our optimum success because we're playing it safe?
Absolutely. And I love the perspective that you offered, Dave, because it's exactly that. I mean, we used to live in a world where our mind would help complete things to protect us. But, we don't have the saber-toothed tiger chasing us anymore where we have to run for our life. We live in a relatively safe world. So, keeping that in mind, our mind is doing what it does best, which is to protect us. But that means that we generally go back into our zone of comfort. And as you know, in our zone of comfort is not where transformation occurs. That's where everything remains the same. So if you want to improve your relationships, if you want to improve your health, if you want to improve your position in the workplace, or make more money, whatever it is for you, how do you expect to do that if you're just going to stay in your zone of comfort?
But the problem I would say is for many people is they don't believe that they are capable of doing all the things that you can help them do. They're just so used to being in that discomfort comfort zone. They look around and everybody they know, friends, family, peers, are all in the same position. So when you come along and say there's something better, look at what I've done. Well, first of all, they might not believe you and your journey, but they might not believe themselves to be capable of having that kind of experience. How do you get them to get their head around that?
I always tell people, I mean, it's such a crazy self-limiting belief. Imagine you haven't even taken the first step and you've already decided that you can't, or it's too hard, or I don't have the time. It's it's like when I climb the mountains, right? I mean, my summit is, in general, the last few mountains I've climbed is about 6 days away. And if I just keep focusing on the summit and don't look at anything else, I'm just like, oh my goodness, it's massive. I don't think I can make it. But guess what? Each hour, each minute, I'm taking that one step and I'm just getting closer and closer and closer. But I have to start with that first step. If I haven't taken the first step, my chances are nil. So, I've failed before I've even tried. I mean, I don't get it. So I always tell people that take the first step. What's the worst that will happen? You'll go back to where you are. And if you're happy where you are, that shouldn't be a problem. But if you want to really give it a shot, then you have to take that first step.
Now, I know two amazing life coaches whose world is demonstrated by their mountaineering techniques. One's Raymond Aron, and yourself. Now, when you talk about taking the first step and you talk about mountains, you're not joking. You're a proper mountaineer, aren't you? I mean, I've seen pictures of you all over crazy places. Where have you walked and where have you climbed and where have you been?
So the first one was in 2010, and this was Kalapatar. So it's actually a big rock. It's not the summit of a mountain, but it's a little higher than the base of Everest, Mount Everest, right? And after that, there was a bit of a break because we decided to start a family, and with young kids, it was just difficult to take that time off. But once the kids turned a certain age and we were comfortable with the grandparents being with them, we then did Kilimanjaro, the tallest in Africa. So that was at 5,985 meters. Then we did Elbrus, which is the tallest in Europe, which again is about 5,400 meters high. And last year, I couldn't travel last year. The year before, in 2019, we did Chopicalqui in Peru, and that was, our first mountain over 6,000 meters in altitude at just over 6,300 meters. And yeah, serious mountaineering in that one. It's the ice axes and your spikes, the crampons on your shoes, so you're digging into the ice and the snow and going up all these walls. So serious stuff, but amazing learnings that we can bring back into the workplace and into our lives.
When you say we, do you mean you and your wife go up, or you and your group of people?
My wife and I and a few crazy friends join us as well.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's brilliant. But like, so I just want to imagine the situation here. You say let's have a dinner party. Your wife says, "Yeah, let's do it on top of Everest," and so all your friends and family go on there. How does it work? How do you turn around and say to people, "Let's go"? And they all have you got a lot of friends that all come around with crampons on? How does it work?
Well, it's like anything in your life. You announce or you share, and then whoever's interested, they get attracted to the energy, and then they come to you, and then they ask questions, and the next thing you know, they say, sign me up, I want to join. But as we've started to scale more challenging mountains, we do have to be a bit cautious, because if you haven't had gone through kindergarten, you can't go to school, and if you haven't finished primary school, you can't go to secondary school. So we have to ensure that people have a certain level of experience to be able to join in. So as time has progressed, the number of people that are able to join are fewer and fewer, because they maybe don't have the experience. So then we tend to be the same group that tackles a mountain year after year.
Well, that makes perfect sense, because I can just envisage if you're having a dinner party, that person that always finishes off all the last bit of dessert then says, yeah, I'm coming up the mountain. You have to turn around and say, I don't think it's right for you. Maybe you should just sit and wait until we come back and then we'll organize something. Have you ever had to turn around to somebody and say, it's not going to work for you. I don't think you should be climbing with us this time?
So, what I say is I put a positive twist on it, Dave. I'll tell them, why don't you try, or why don't you go ahead, not try, because try is, it's a weak word. It doesn't have that energy that we require in there. Why don't you summit this mountain before you join us? Because that will help you train and get prepared to be with us, right? So it's not closing the door necessarily, it's keeping it open, but ensuring that they understand there's a prerequisite.
It's like turning around to my dogs and saying, fetch. You just throw a ball and we run after it and we never come back. So when you say this to people, I just want to check in it and being nosy. How many people go on that pilgrimage to climb up a small mountain and come back and say, Saahil, I'm ready. Let's go do some big stuff.
So, this is in 2010, when social media wasn't as big as it was today. I'm going to use that example because it's really fresh in my mind. Between my wife and I, we must have messaged a good 200-300 people, thinking we'll get at least 1% join us from this list. And we had people responding saying, I've got my blow dry appointment during that week, so I can't join. Or do they have hot towel racks? Because if they do, then I'll definitely join.
Yeah, I
So
can
you
have a
see, people
massage.
are not ready to let go of the comfort that they are used to. And in the end, we had one person join us, right? So out of 300 people, we had a 0.3% hit rate.
Well, that's probably about right, because you know that whoever's going with you is a contributor. They're not going to be somebody that you have to carry down on a stretcher or leave a couple of fingers behind in order to get them safely home. So it's got to be a decision that's done the right way. But
Absolutely.
how does this set you up? Because I'm fascinated to know, because I know how important the mountaineering side is to you, all about achievements and making sure that you've walked that path before you ask anybody else to do it. But what's the parallels between being a mountaineer and also helping people to declutter and move forward in their lives?
So look, Dave, one of the things that I often get is, when I ask someone, what do you want in life? They'll say, I want to be successful. And I go, great, that's fantastic. But what does that mean? And then they're thinking and they're going, I want to be rich. And I go, great. What does that mean? Is it rich in wealth? Is it rich in health? Is it rich in relationships? What is it? Define it. And so people haven't quite defined where they want to go. And so that's, it's imagine when I go to the base of a mountain range and I go, yeah, I'm just going to walk and see where this leads. And hopefully I'll get somewhere. No, that doesn't work. I have to identify my summit. And once I've identified my summit, it's all about the steps I can take in order to get there. But it's not just the steps I take. What are the obstacles in my way? Is it health that I need to take care of and declutter from? Is it, relationships that are constantly on my mind because, of something that's happened? Is it my nature of just worrying all the time, for example, that's, holding me back? And then once I'm there, I'm like, what if that gets amplified and I'm just constantly worrying about, ooh, there might be an avalanche, or, what if I fall off this cliff? Or, so, it's on ground zero, you're in your comfort zone. But when you're on the mountain and many thousand meters above sea level, there is no protection. So whatever challenges you face at ground zero are all going to get amplified when you're higher up, right? And it's the same thing, I believe, in the workplace. When you're working at a certain level, things might be okay. But as you go up in the ranks, you have more responsibilities, the pressure is greater. And if you have a crack, that crack is going to start to get larger and larger and possibly just, burst, right? And we don't want that to happen. So there's a lot that, the mountain teaches us. I mean, this is just one lesson in particular.
Now, I'm fascinated to learn more about your background because when we first started talking, and you said that you've done mountaineering and you go off and do these things and you're a life coach, you help people to declutter. I thought, okay, here we go. And then later on, when we started working together, you said, oh, and by the way, my family's got a diamond business. And I suddenly thought, well, why are you doing this? Why aren't you just not running the business? Why are you going into a business where you're helping people? Not saying, well, diamonds don't really help people, just make them look good. But going into a business where you're predominantly giving your life, your spirit, your time to get people to be more successful in their lives rather than just concentrating on making money and selling jewelry to people. Where's that come from? Why is that change? And how does that help you get people to move forward better?
So, Dave, uh, it's like, if when you chase something, right? You keep chasing something because you believe that once you get there, it's going to be all great. And perhaps you say, when I make my first million, I'm going to be happy. And then you get there and you're like, actually, when I get to 5 million, I'm going to be happy. And then you get there and then you're like, actually, when I get to 10 million, it never stops. It's a moving goalpost. And I realized that in the workplace, although the business has been good for us, it wasn't fulfilling. It's like something was missing in my life, right? And people always talk about purpose, and one of the challenges I faced was that I didn't have a purpose, and actually that made me more anxious because I'm like, wow, everyone around me seems to have a purpose, and I don't. And then I asked my wife, I'm like, do you know what your purpose is? And she goes, yeah, and this is what it is. And I go, oh my goodness, even you know? I don't know.
Even you,
What's going
careful, careful. She might be
And
listening.
I mean that in a good way. Sometimes when people are suffering, they want other people to suffer with them because that gives them comfort. That's where that statement came from. But I was actually happy for her that she knew hers. And then I read this passage in a book, and it said, the purpose is that you leave this earth in a better state than when you entered it. So you elevate your soul, your life. You do good. And I said to myself, I said, wow, that really resonates with me. And the more I started decluttering my life, one of the things that it brought a lot of clarity, right? I felt like I was running in the mist and I couldn't see clearly. But as I started to remove the clutter, I could see very clearly. And one thing that became apparent during this journey is that as I started to have more peace on the inside, because you can imagine when all that clutter is removed, toxic relationships, just being always on the run, constantly chasing a moving goalpost. I mean, there's so many items that were in my life that weren't serving any benefit. The moment I came to peace and acceptance and all the other tools that I talk about in the book, one thing happened, and that was I got peace within. And when I got peace within, Dave, it's like the world around me went from a violent world to a peaceful world. Because I started seeing things from a different lens. And I said, wow. So, and then it became apparent to me, my purpose in life is actually to spread the word of nonviolence. And the only way I can do that is to help leaders or change makers find peace within. Because once they find peace within, that trickles down to the rest of their audience and their community and the people around them. And so that's what gives me passion and purpose to continue this work. So I don't ignore my business, but I set aside some time on making a change, on creating positive impact, because I believe that when you work with people who wish to change the world, you can create impact beyond your imagination. But it starts with one. Someone says, that's a big target, trying to change the world. I say, yes, but you start with one, and then one changes many, and then many change the world. So one step at a time, just like climbing the mountain.
Makes perfect sense. And you mentioned there about a lot of people could do that extra special help to make a different perspective. I can give you a list of politicians and global leaders you should really be spending some quality time with. With that whole thing in mind, there's There was I mean, we talked at length last year, and we met and we did some work before COVID. So the decluttering bit that you work on, getting people to feel freedom and all the rest of it, does that still count when you're in lockdown and you really need your discomfort zone because it's familiar to be able to help you to get through the challenges when the world around you is changing? Because surely decluttering works best when you've got a free range of options. When you've got less options, it surely makes sense just to stay happy. And sometimes people are happy in their discomfort zone. So how do you deal with that?
So Dave, I would say that today people need this more than ever. Because again, when you're busy, you don't notice these cracks, you don't notice these flaws, or whatever you wish to call it, this excess baggage that doesn't serve you any purpose. But when you're under pressure, when there's a lot more fear, when people are on top of each other now because they can't leave their houses, and they're working from home, that's when these cracks become wider and wider and wider. I mean, imagine if you and the missus had a relationship that was a little bit on the edge. When you're
I can't
forced
imagine that for a second, but carry on.
but if there's a crack in that relationship and now you're living together and you're not able to have that time by yourself, that's just going to amplify it, right? That's going to get worse. So it's important now than ever to work on those cracks and to remove that clutter in your life. So it's about, but it all comes with awareness. I find that before I was just running through the day. I'd wake up, get the kids up, feed them breakfast, drop them to school, get to the gym, go to the office, work, eat lunch quickly, work, get back home in time to put the kids to bed, spend a little time with the wife. Hopefully I had some energy left over to meet some friends or spend time with family and go to bed. There was never any time for me. There was never any time to invest in myself. And how can I expect to get to the next level in life if I don't invest in me? Right? And so I found that now more than ever, it's time to invest in yourself, because when things, one, because there's a lot more pressure, and two, when things do open up, you're going to come back stronger, faster, more apt, and just ready to take on any challenge. And that's going to give you the edge.
No, I understand that. And you're absolutely right. In my opinion, I think everything you've said is completely right. I'm just wondering about the lockdown thing, because what happens when you're in lockdown with your family is it almost feels selfish to declutter yourself, but not take everybody else on the same journey, because you do need space to yourself, which you can't find easily if you're in lockdown with your family. But you also need to have a different mindset, which is very much about how it all comes together. It's got to be an interlocking relationship rather than separation. So, I mean, this is my opinion. I mean, from my experience, the same as everybody's is different of last year. If anything, it brought us closer together, because the things that I wanted to do on my own, I would either find time to do it, or would just decide, no, that's not good for everybody. So I'm going to do less of that and more together. And I don't know how healthy that is as a lot of choices, but certainly when we're all stuck inside, it made a lot of sense to make it a common denominator.
Look, Dave, you're absolutely right. I mean, in the case of a family where the dynamics are strong and they're, positive, absolutely. You do want to think of the others. You want to think of how it can benefit the family. But it's very important to focus on self as well. And so, for example, what I did during the lockdown is I would just be awake before everyone else. And I would spend that time by myself. I would use that time to reflect and go through my thoughts and my processes. And that would energize me every single morning. And so I would wake up anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour before the rest of the house. So yes, the family was very important. And we wanted to ensure that everyone was aligned and supportive of each other. But that doesn't give me a reason not to work on myself, because the way I saw it, and if I really want to help out my family, the more I have to give, I can only do that if my cup is overflowing. And the only way that my cup is going to overflow is if I invest in myself. So that's the perspective that I wish to offer the audience, is that work on yourself as well, but not to the detriment of the rest of the family. But at the same time, you've heard of lots of cases of divorce, domestic abuse. I mean, again, for the relationships that were already struggling, it just got much worse. And unfortunately, whether it's ego or many other reasons, relationships got severed, and that's a shame. Because if people were able to communicate, and I feel that a lot of the work that I do comes down to communication, because a lot of people first focus on relationships when they come to me when it comes to decluttering their life, whether it's with family, with colleagues, or whoever else it might be. Because here's the thing, Dave, if you want to work on yourself, it's a lot harder to look in the mirror and be honest with yourself. It's a lot easier first to focus on the external. But I push people to focus on the internal, because that's where the most transformation happens.
Absolutely. Everything around you is a reflection of what's going on inside you. So if inside, as you mentioned, you got lots of turmoil, we're going to see turmoil everywhere. And especially at these pandemic times where you really have to be able to calm down. I mean, on about getting up that early, I get up about 45 minutes to an hour before anybody else to do some meditation, breathing exercises. And that's allowed me to be grounded to whatever happens during the day. Before that, I found myself having panic attacks and having days when I just had to have a day off. I just couldn't work because things would catch up with you and you just think, I can't do this. So I understand completely. But here's the thing now, because I think that in many cases, we've kind of, it feels, I mean, in Dubai, it certainly feels like in the UAE that we've got over that hump of the challenges of lockdown. Many places around the world are still spiking, and I feel for everybody going through it as well. We've been very lucky with the way that our government and rules in this country have played it. But for anybody, certainly in business, it makes sense more than ever to do that decluttering exercise, because you can't rely on that over threading of business when you're going for a disruption of digitization. A load of businesses that have failed because they couldn't handle lockdown. A load of people's needs have changed, like shopping malls and so on, going instead to order stuff from Amazon and other suppliers. All those industries, if you're a practitioner, if you're a business owner, or an employee, you really have to have some kind of clarity to see where you go next, because you can't rely on that wage at the end of the month in the same way as you could before, because anything could happen. So I think there's probably more people than ever need to be taking your message and reading your book.
Absolutely, Dave. Look, I mean, if anything, what we've learned based on what you just shared is that we have to act, and we have to step out of our comfort zone, right? I mean, if we're going to stick to our comfort zone and hope that everything goes back to quote unquote normal, that's when we're going to get left behind.
You're absolutely right. Um, so where does that leave us? But as somebody who spends time coaching people, who are your ideal clients? Who do you think needs your help the most? And what criteria should they bring to you for you to be able to work your magic?
So, Dave, the people I find that need this message of breaking free and removing the clutter from their life the most are people who are usually in positions where there's a lot of loneliness, right? And that usually comes towards the top. Because as you go higher and higher up in the chain, in the corporate world, or if you're a business owner, as an entrepreneur, it's sometimes lonely. You fear being judged because now you're in a position of more power, and you don't want to seem weak in front of your team members. You don't want to seem incompetent. You don't want to seem like you can't handle it. And so you're on your own. And maybe you're not telling your spouse, your friends. So who do you speak to? There's no outlet, and ultimately these people start developing a lot of clutter in their life as a result, because a lot of things are held inside. And for those who understand and appreciate energy is effectively, it's stuck, it's staying inside of you. And if it's positive, that might be okay, but if it's negative energy, that can slowly cause issues with your health, whether it's physical or mental. So leaders who are usually higher up in the pyramid can benefit the most. And I would even go as far as saying change makers, right? Because millions of other people. So that could be world leaders. It could be people in non-profit, not-for-profit organizations. Anyone who's going to impact millions and millions of people around them.
But the problem is, surely, when it comes to looking at that target market, the big decision makers, the leaders, the CEOs, they don't think they've got a problem. They know that they don't see their family enough, but they've got massive egos in many cases, it's rare you don't find somebody because they have to build up their business accordingly with a lot of determination and a lot of willpower. When it comes to not knowing what the problem is, do you find resistance persuading them that maybe what you need is just to get rid of a lot of the stuff that's in your life, and because they've built up this ecosystem that kind of works for them, but it's poisoning them at the same time? Do you find resistance convincing them that they really need to step back and then rebuild it again?
Dave, I love your question. So, I get a lot of people, and I always use this analogy. I'm like, imagine if you didn't have any shoes and you've walked for your whole life without shoes. And, you thought that's how it is. And this is how walking will always be. And then I come across to you and I say, here's a pair of, shoes with nice cushioning and air and all of this underneath your feet. And then you start using them and go, wow, I mean, I didn't realize that life could be so good for walking. And so that's what happens. Most people don't acknowledge or don't realize that there is an issue. But again, what I found through the pandemic is a lot of people under pressure, these cracks have become more apparent. And people are now realizing that, okay, I actually do need to spend a little bit more time on my health. And by health, I do mean physical and mental. And I do need to spend more time on my relationships because, I'm at home all day and things, I don't even recognize my own kids. Like, I didn't realize they were already in fifth grade. What is that the school they're in? Really? Okay. So people are understanding the value of health and relationships over wealth. Before people were just chasing wealth, but I am starting to see the shift towards health and relationships as well. And think about it, Dave. You could have all the money in the world, but if you have no relationships and no health, what's the point? You're going to be on the hospital bed going, how much money can I pay to stay alive? Whereas if you focus on health and you focus on relationships, and on the wealth side, you don't make millions, but you make enough to live a comfortable life, you still have joy, laughter, good health to go play with your grandkids and your kids. Life is beautiful.
I agree completely. So looking towards the future, once we are all out of the pandemic and out of lockdown, I don't think COVID's going to go away completely from what I'm reading, but I do think we're going to get some kind of new normality where we're outside of a house wearing masks, a bit of social distancing, but certainly business as of a new usual. How important is it to have things in place for decluttering? Because we're going to have a world that's gone through trauma. I mean, at least half of the population, which is several billion people, are going to be feeling pressure from the challenges of what they've been through, their loved ones have been through, their work, their isolation, whether they're single or they've lost their job. Being able to declutter, being able to look after emotional and mental health is such an important part of the future. What would your advice to these people be?
My advice is, it's very important, Dave, and it's so important to focus on it because think about it. If your foundation is weak, and then when things open up and you suddenly start building quickly again, you're going to build on top of a foundation that's a little shaky, and at some point there's a risk that it might collapse. And so you want to have a solid foundation, one that's so strong that you can easily build up and build up quickly. And if you're carrying all this weight, again, using that same analogy I used earlier, you have this ball and chain wrapped around your leg, and one represents each piece of clutter in your life. So you've got many of them wrapped around your leg. Just imagine trying to climb up a ladder. Just imagine how much harder it is, right? You're just tiring yourself out. You're taking yourself to an early grave. If you don't take care of yourself, physically, mentally, relationships, life just becomes a whole lot harder. And people feel, unfortunately, that when they're trying hard, if they're not getting the results they need, they try harder. And so it's almost this negative downward spiral, right? Because you keep spending more time, but you didn't fix it, or you didn't I shouldn't say fix because it's not really a problem, but you haven't addressed the challenge at the core. And until you don't address it at the core, your foundation remains weak and you have that chance of collapsing. So you have to start breaking free from this clutter that's holding you down. That could be strained relationships. It could be health challenges. It could be, your mental clutter, that voice, that monkey mind, as they call it. And if you don't address it, you lower your chance of succeeding, whatever your definition of success may be.
Well, for those who want to connect with you and those of us who are touched by the way you've shared this, there's a book, Break Free. It's available on Amazon. It's a paperback. You can get it for about, for 79 dirhams, which in terms of dollars is about $17, I think, $17, $18. And so I'd recommend for everybody to go and check that out. And also I want to share with you the website, which is this one, Saahil Mehta.com. You're looking very regal there, by the way, Saahil. I was going to say you look definitely like one of the royals. I'm not saying which country you look like we're royal from, but you definitely should have your own country in that picture. Have a look at that. You look amazing. I love that.
Thank you.
There we go. And the slogan on it is there, learning to live fuller by starting to let go. All about decluttering, and it's a really smart way of thinking. So with that in mind, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. I'm sure there's a ton of people who got incredible value, myself included. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. So thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing the success of a book. I look forward to you helping lots and lots of more people. And I want to know the next time you climb a mountain so I can make an excuse to be, oh, my ankle's just gone. Oh, I was going to join you. Can I have some more dessert, please? Saahil Mehta, thank you for joining us. Have an amazing day, and thank you for coming on Speak on Stage.
Thank you, Dave.
So there you go, brilliant. Saahil Mehta. Make sure you connect with him. In the things below this video, you can see all the contact details for getting onto his website, so you can contact him, book him for speaking events, get him to work with you, and also get hold of that book, Break Free. And I could heartily recommend that. Working with him has been a pleasure all these years, and you should do the same too. So, more great interviews coming up, more great stars. Make sure you connect with everybody. Make sure you follow them on LinkedIn, and we'll share with you some of the biggest hitters of this year and the future. Meanwhile, hope you enjoyed the session. Look forward to your thoughts, your comments, and your shares. Look after yourself. Stay safe. I'll see you again soon on Speak on Stage.